Greetings to everyone. My name is Pastor Ron Parks, the International Ambassador for Africa Missions Frontier, and I am here with our International Director, Pastor Cleopas Chitapa. And Pastor, it's always good to have you in Philadelphia, especially this being the 10th year.
It's truly a pleasure. It's always a delight to be back again in the city, and 2012 is a special year indeed.
You know, this year we are celebrating 10 years of relationships in the North American context. And while we are participating with just 10 years, every ministry has a beginning. When did Africa Missions Frontier have its beginnings?
I would say Africa Missions Frontier was always the burden of my heart since my college years. And it was really one of the top priority issues that I would pray to the Lord about, that even though God was leading us to raise a church in a local context, we wanted it to impress a global perspective as far as missions is involved in reaching out to the lost. And the earliest activities that we have is around about 1997, when we actually started the public ministry of launching Cornerstone Fellowship International. And from then on, I was already involved in missions in different contexts. But the deliberate intention that we had was to ensure that our dimension of involvement would integrate and involve people of African descent or people of color to be involved in missions in a notable manner, where we were initiating the programs and launching them on our own. So I can say that those kinds of partnerships were consolidated by 2002.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I know that there are many things that our ministry does, especially in Southern Africa and even in England. But when you look at our present ministry functions, is there one aspect of the ministry that's most outstanding to you? I know it's a hard question.
Well, the mode of operation that we've always embraced is that I've always said AMF is a tri-dimensional ministry.
Right.
And that meaning to say that there's one component of our life that is about evangelism. That's why we use the E3 concept, that we are here to evangelize the lost, to establish churches, and to equip leadership. And basically that cycle keeps going round and round, because we are persuaded that that is the most comprehensive way of ensuring a stable work for the Lord is actually done. We have different models that have been set in our ministry. I know that our school on its own set an excellent example, starting from one single campus that we began with, and now we're rising to 7 campuses, including the new work we will be starting in Kenya. But what I have seen, it was new ground even for us, but something that was born out of many years of research, of checking on what is the most effective way of leadership development. Sometimes the conventional way was always for people to spend years in college, or probably 3-4 years in a Bible college, then eventually be launched into the ministry. But we found out that on-the-job training is the most effective way.
Wow.
So I would say Cornerstone Bible Academy truly has been a real success story in terms of what we have done. Then our national chapters have also been incredible, and I think the Namibia model is our very best model, because we started out with one single city, and today we're rolling into the 6th, 7th city. Almost every 2 months we hear a new church plant in a different city. So basically what we see is that it's possible to plant seed in a nation or among a people group, and then through a process of self-replication, God's word begins to spread, and we find many new church plants emerging, and we thank God for that.
Just as a follow-up question, you know, my amazement has been to watch the Cornerstone Bible Academy students, even first-year students that are now leading the school, and people that are even pastoring and operating in different aspects of ministry, actually throughout Southern Africa. What is the importance of leadership development when it comes to missions and church ministry?
I do believe, especially in Africa, it's the most critical thing. I think a very prominent theologian years ago said, the tragedy in Africa is that we are building a church that is 10 miles long but 1 inch
Wow.
deep. It's a question of discipleship. Africa is not so much in a shortage of converts as much as it is an issue of how we are sustaining what we
Wow.
are building into the kingdom. The thing that most people are not aware of is that when our work of evangelism is not proportionate with our pace of leadership development, usually there is not much good that comes out of that.
Wow.
Then eventually you see our religious crusade eventually becomes breeding ground for cults and all other things. So it's critical to develop leaders. Leaders are the pillars of all the work that God does. Like they say, everything stands and falls on leadership. So
Wow.
basically, we find that as a priority issue. But our method of training is essentially the most important in terms, because there has always been colleges around,
Right.
theological institutes, seminaries of every name. But we really believe in the fact that God can use anybody. I call that demystifying ministry.
Right.
And our training pattern is that a person should be on the field, do not have to leave their field activity, but actually be trained whilst they are still involved practically in the ministry. I can assure you that I went through colleges and different seminaries, and the conclusion that I have made, which I have seen many people who have been involved in training people for ministry come to, is that seminary sometimes kills people.
Wow.
And
Wow.
detaching them from the actual field activity, then taking them 3 years of intensive theological work in the absence of practical application, eventually they come out, they are not good for anything else except to become what I call pulpiteers. They are
Wow.
professors. They are just good for teaching, but
Wow.
they are no longer, somehow Bible college removes the passion and zeal that they had initially. And I have many explanations to that, and part of it is because of the fact that most of our seminaries are taught by people that have never practically been involved
Wow.
in ministry. So that becomes the problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
I noticed in 2011, you began to talk to me about the future of the ministry and even rebranding our name.
Yes.
We are now Africa Missions Frontier, because the ministry had its beginning
Yeah.
in the African context, but the Lord has laid on your heart a more global perspective beyond Africa.
Yes.
And you've been talking about Global Missions Frontier. Can you speak to
Yeah.
how God has brought that about in your heart?
Well, it's a change that we believe the whole rebranding effort is intended to capture the scope of our operations at the present moment and much more into the future.
Wow.
Because we started out, Africa was the main base, but I think we are spreading our tentacles to different parts of the world. I think by the end of this year we will be having a presence in 3-4 continents,
Wow.
which really has been a blessing from the Lord. But I would like to say that sometimes the real thing that has caused that is a trend that is happening globally as far as immigration is concerned. Now, I say that one wonders why in every election in every country, immigration today is about one of the number one issues
Right.
that you have. And part of the reason
Even
for
here.
that, even in this country, that's true. And the reason for that is because populations are moving. It's no longer your world alone. We are mixing races, and people are traveling and moving from one part of the world to the other.
Right.
And so my thinking and what the Lord has been helping me to see is that our planning should be deliberate when it comes to accomplishment of the Great Commission. We need to think about that trend. In Africa, we're seeing a different thing, where in spite of before we even worry about immigration, there's extreme urbanization taking place.
Wow.
That's why we are building large churches in the cities,
Right.
because of the fact that there is a movement of people. The United Nations actually predicts by 2050, more than 3/4 of the African population will probably be concentrated in the city slums. So we see a situation where the future we need to plan our efforts in church planting, focusing on that.
Wow.
Then when you look into the nations of the world, you will see that in every city now we have an increasing population of people that are moving. Zimbabwe itself went through difficulties and political challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Those challenges were actually a blessing because they caused an exodus of our professionals.
Wow.
Where a third of our professionals eventually were outside the country. We capitalized on that in order to ensure that the movement of believers will also ultimately result in the spread of the gospel. So you look into nations like the United Kingdom, in the city of Birmingham, where the ministry is based now, 40% is Indian. So when you conduct evangelism efforts, you need to be mindful of that and realize that the target population that we are looking at is actually not Africans. So the concept of using global rather than African is simply trying to reflect the scope of the ministry. So I deliberately felt that we should celebrate our decade of fruitfulness under the banner of African Missions Frontier. But from here forward, the ministry will be called Global Missions Frontier, and we have already put many things afoot for that transition. Yes.
Well, Pastor, just one more question that I would like to put before you. This again is a year of celebration, and specifically we're honoring God's faithfulness and how that faithfulness has funneled through relationships, and our ministry has been tremendously blessed with supporters, some known, some unknown. As you reflect upon how God has graciously supported our work, what notes or signals of appreciation go forth from your heart?
Well, I deeply appreciate and thank the Lord so much for many of the people that have rallied around this vision. And to be honest, our ministry has not been one of those that attempt to raise funding through any kind of shenanigans. We have sought the Lord and just prayed, and there are those whom God has spoken to be part and parcel of this effort as we try to reach the lost and be involved in ministry in as much as we can. But I really appreciate many of God's people. Some of them have been with us from the very beginning. And they have remained faithful and consistent in their giving over the years. It's amazing how God's blessing would reflect even in people's giving with time. Because I do remember some people that started out probably giving $20, maybe adopting a student for a while. And at times you will be surprised to see the same people in the passage of time rising to levels where they give $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a single giver. So that has shown me that God's faithfulness has remained with his people, and in the passage of time, as they remained loyal and faithful to the work, God has also expanded their blessing. I am truly grateful, and I do thank you for retaining the relationship with many of our very special partners and those that have been with us over the years. And I believe that the future is glorious, and I think God will see provision to every need as we look into the future. As their assignment grows, so does the demand for resources too. But I really believe that he will remain faithful as he has proven himself faithful in this decade.
Pastor, again, thank you for your time. Thank you. On behalf of those of us in North America, happy 10 years
Thank you.
of serving together in Africa Missions Frontier.